Armero was an ordinary town in central Colombia, built on flat land where rivers once flowed freely down from the Andes. It was a place shaped by agriculture, by routine, by repetition. People there measured time not in dates, but in harvests, school terms, and the familiar rhythm of daily life. Nevado del Ruiz, the snow-covered volcano visible in the distance, was simply part of the horizon. It had always been there. White, calm, silent. To most people in Armero, it felt permanent, almost decorative, like a mountain that belonged to the sky rather than the earth. For centuries before 1985, the volcano had slept, but history remembered what people had forgotten. In the 16th century, a similar eruption had sent deadly mudflows down the same valleys, killing thousands of indigenous inhabitants. The rivers that passed near Armero were not random. They were ancient paths carved by water, ice, and volcanic debris. The land remembered, even if the people did not. In the months leading up to November 1985, Nevado del Ruiz began to show signs of unrest. Small eruptions sent ash into the air. The ground trembled lightly. Scientists studied the volcano closely and grew concerned. They warned that an eruption could melt the glacier at the summit and trigger massive lahars, fast-moving flows of mud and debris capable of destroying everything in their path. Hazard maps were created. Armero was clearly marked in red, but warnings moved slowly through human systems. Reports must be read. Decisions must be approved. Authorities argued about costs, about panic, about whether evacuation was truly necessary. Life in Armero continued as it always had. Farmers worked their fields. Children played in the streets. Shops opened in the morning and closed at night. People heard about the volcano, but nothing had happened yet. And nothing happening feels the same as nothing ever happening. November 13th, 1985, arrived quietly. It was a Wednesday. The day passed without drama. Clouds hung low round the mountain. Light rain fell in the evening, steady but unremarkable. In Armero, people ate dinner, listened to the radio, and prepared for sleep. Some families talked about the volcano. Others did not think about it at all. There were no sirens. No evacuation orders. No sense of urgency. High above the town, inside the mountain, pressure continued to build. At 9:09 p.m., Nevado del Ruiz erupted. It was not a violent explosion that shattered the night with fire. Instead, ash and gas rose into the dark sky, almost unseen by those below. The real danger was invisible. The heat from the eruption melted massive amounts of snow and ice near the summit. Water mixed with ash, rock, and soil, forming thick, deadly rivers of mud. These lahars began to move downhill. At first, they were far away. They traveled through narrow valleys, growing larger as they picked up debris. Trees were ripped from the ground. Boulders were lifted and carried like toys. Entire hillsides collapsed into the flow. The mud grew heavier, faster, more destructive with every kilometer. In Armero, most people were asleep when the lahar approached. Shortly before midnight, survivors later recalled hearing a deep, distant roar. It sounded like thunder, but it did not fade. It grew louder, closer, more continuous. Some people woke up confused. Others never woke at all. At approximately 11:30 p.m., the lahar reached Armero. The town was struck from multiple directions as the mud followed river channels that cut directly through residential areas. Walls collapsed instantly. Houses disintegrated as if made of paper. Streets disappeared beneath several meters of thick, black sludge. The force was overwhelming. People were crushed, drowned, or buried alive within seconds. There was no time to run. Entire families were wiped out in their sleep. Parents tried to hold onto children as the mud tore them apart. Some people were carried away in the darkness, colliding with debris, screaming until their voices were swallowed by the roar of the flow. Others were trapped inside collapsing buildings, pinned beneath concrete and wood as mud filled every open space. In less than 10 minutes, Armero was gone. When the mud finally slowed and settled, it hardened quickly. The survivors found themselves trapped in place, unable to move their legs or bodies. Some were buried up to their waists, others up to their chests or necks. The air was cold. The rain continued to fall. Round them, voices cried for help, then slowly went silent as people lost strength. Rescue did not arrive quickly. Roads leading to Armero had been destroyed. Bridges were gone. Communication lines were cut. It took hours for the full scale of the disaster to become clear. When rescuers finally reached the site, they struggled to understand what they were seeing. The town they remembered no longer existed. There were no streets, no buildings, no recognizable landmarks. Only a vast, gray-brown plain of hardened mud, scattered debris, and human remains. More than 20,000 people were dead. Among the survivors was a young girl named Omera Sanchez. She was 13 years old. Omera had been trapped in the remains of her home, her legs pinned beneath the body of a relative and concrete rubble. Muddy water surrounded her lower body. She could not be freed without heavy equipment, which rescuers did not have. For nearly 3 days, Omera remained trapped. Rescuers stayed with her, talking to her, trying to keep her calm. She answered their questions. She smiled. She sang songs. At times, she asked about school and her family. She did not fully understand that she was dying. As hours passed, her condition worsened. The water around her legs caused infection and circulation failure. Her face began to swell. Her eyes turned red. Still, she spoke calmly. She told rescuers she was tired. She said she wanted to sleep. Cameras recorded her final hours. The images spread around the world and shocked millions. Armero died on November 16, 1985. Her death became the symbol of Armero, not because it was unique, but because it was visible. Thousands of others died unseen. In the days that followed, the scale of the tragedy became undeniable. Bodies were recovered slowly, many never identified. Survivors searched for relatives among the mud, finding pieces of clothing, shoes, photographs. Entire family lines had vanished. Schools no longer existed. Cemeteries were buried. The town had been erased not just physically, but socially. Armero was never rebuilt. The disaster raised painful questions. Scientists had warned of exactly this scenario. Hazard maps had predicted the Lahars paths with tragic accuracy. Evacuation could have saved thousands of lives. But hesitation, bureaucracy, and disbelief delayed action. The tragedy of Armero became a lesson written in mud and silence. Today, the site where Armero once stood is quiet. Grass grows over hardened earth. A few monuments mark where neighborhoods once existed. Visitors walk through open fields, unaware that beneath their feet lie the remains of a town that went to sleep and never woke up. Nevado del Ruiz still stands in the distance. Snow still covers its peak. It looks peaceful. It always did. The story of Armero is not one of sudden chaos, but of quiet inevitability. A slow build-up. Ignored warnings. Ordinary people trusting that tomorrow would be the same as today, and a single night in which time stopped for tens of thousands of lives. Armero exists now only in memory, as a reminder that nature does not need to be loud to be deadly, and that the most devastating disasters often arrive while the world is asleep.